Izuku knew that some kids might be more problematic than others. He was ready to have to adjust to a problematic child. But 3? At once? Izuku sighed. Okay, I can do this. The faster those kids get out of there the better. Let's go over everything again. Thankfully, after Izuku awoke from his sleep, if you call being knocked out for 3 hours sleep, he found that the O.P.C.C, no, their new name, DOC Division of Overpowered Children, had sent him files on all 3 children. The first one was an 8-year-old girl named Fukunoko. Unsurprisingly from her name, her father was an abusive jerk who sported extremely outdated views. After years of abuse, Izuku didn't know what kind of paper just said physical and mental abuse. The mother contacted DOC in child services and the father was arrested and eventually was killed in prison. The mother gave up any and all rights to the girl and thus she's been in one of DOC's facilities for a while. Her quirk was called fear gas. Her skin can emit a gas that when inhaled, causes the victim to hallucinate their worst fears. It also messes with certain parts of the brain, shutting off certain parts that control logic, causing even the most rational and collected people to go crazy with fear. Unfortunately, she has a habit of accidentally unleashing this gas whenever she's overly stressed or afraid. Fortunately, DOC actually did something useful with their money and developed a cure for this, which Izuku will be getting several shipments of. Okay, so I'm definitely going to need to hire a therapist at some point soon. Izuku sighed. I'll also need to give her room a special ventilation system that can suck out the gas. And the door will need to be airtight so no gas can get out. I'll also need gas masks to be hung up around the house in case of an emergency. The next child was Otoko, a 7-year-old boy who had been with them since birth, like Shiroku. His quirk caused anyone who was feeling a noticeable amount of fear while touching him to combust into flames. Wait a minute. Izuku stopped reading it for a moment. They brought the kid that sets people on fire when they're afraid, with the girl that causes people to feel immense fear. Why? New name, same old incompetence it seemed. And knowing them they wouldn't be likely to change anything so it was no use trying to reschedule things. Getting back to the document. The boy also had physical mutations that made him look very frightening. Fortunately, DOC had developed a special containment cloak that will both hide his appearance and keep anyone from touching him directly. Except for the face area which is still exposed due to any attempt at covering it being met with breathing issues. Okay, so I'm going to need a lot of backups from that cloak. Maybe I can convince him to carry around a small fire extinguisher just in case. Izuku thought. The last child was a 40-foot monster, because of course he was. Where am I even supposed to put a 40-foot child? Izuku wondered. I guess I'll have to make someplace that houses him specifically. Getting all that set up is gonna be a pain. I might need to call more construction companies than just the Urarakas. Continuing with the file, the child's name was Kai and he was about 7. He apparently resembled a hydra but with only 3 heads. Despite having 3 heads he tended to only talk out of one. And if a 40-foot, and still getting bigger, 3-headed child wasn't enough, his blood was poisonous. While the poison, in small amounts, wasn't that dangerous, his large size ensured that if you got the poison on you, it wasn't gonna be in small amounts. Okay, so aside from having to build an entirely different building for him, I'm going to have the antidote for the poison in the med bay and I'm most likely going to have to make his room out of extremely sturdy material. Izuku thought. I really do feel bad for him. It's gonna be hard for him to interact with everyone else at that size. Although I imagine Kiba would love to play with someone that big, actually I'll need to see how careful he is before I let him play with Kiba. Knowing that girl, she would definitely hurt herself. I wish there were more details but this is probably the best I'll get. Izuku sighed. He took a deep breath and clenched his fist with determination. Alright, Izuku said out loud. Let's do this, for the kids. 3 days later, Izuku and some of the kids stood outside, waiting for the new arrivals. Izuku had already told them all about their quirks and, most of them were excited. Especially Kiba, Sansan, and Kei. When are they gonna get here? Kei was so excited she was jumping. I can't wait to see the Hydra. Kiba added. Sansan just bounced up and down excitedly. The others had decided to stay inside. They would introduce themselves at a later time. At first, Izuku wanted everyone to come out and introduce themselves, however after a bit of thinking he realized that idea may be a poor one. They'd be getting children fairly often, so it'd be repetitive and exhausting to keep gathering all the kids at the door to meet new children, and it might overwhelm the new additions as well. And so he let some of the kids stay inside and continue their days. The first two should be brought in cars. But how are they going to bring Kai? Izuku wondered. Izuku's question was answered by a large shadow moving over them. The four of them looked up and saw something huge in the air, flying above them. And Izuku had a feeling he knew what it was. Thump! The huge creature landed just in front of the gates, and Izuku could see that it was the same monster that the paper described the child known as Kai. Large green scales with 3 serpent-like heads and 2 legs. However, what was not described was the scaly wings on his back. I wish I had known about him being able to fly. Izuku cursed the paper's lack of information. Thank goodness his room isn't done yet. I may still have the opportunity to make some changes. The gate opened and in walked Kai, carrying DOC agents and presumably the other children on his back. Once the boy saw Izuku, he excitedly walked forward to him, carefully avoiding destroying or trampling anything on his way. Excuse me? Are you going to be my new father? The surprisingly polite Hydra-like boy asked with a booming voice that was too high-pitched to fit his body. If that's what you want. Izuku looked at the child who was looming over him with 3 heads. Yes, I would very much like that, please. Kai rapidly nodded. Kai! Let us down! Shouted a DOC agent. Oh. Sorry. Kai apologized, before lowering his heads. The DOC agents got off, along with a cloaked figure Izuku assumed to be Otoko, judging by his size and the cloak. He was rather large for his age, standing at a little under 5 feet. Getting a lot at his face, he was in fact rather strange-looking. He had 3 dangly vine-like things hanging down his face, and he was a shade of mossy green with big black eyes. The last DOC agent that came off was holding who Izuku assumed to be Fukunoko. She was a short girl with purple hair. She was also unconscious and the DOC agent was wearing a gas mask, so Izuku had a creeping feeling that there was an incident. The masked agent said to Izuku, "The girl is rather skittish." She panicked when she saw the boy and released her quirk before passing out due to fear. "I'm sorry." Kai lowered his head in shame. "It's not your fault. You can't help how people react to you." Izuku immediately comforted the large boy. She woke up and had another incident, released her quirk, and passed out. "Unfortunately, one of ours was caught in the gas." The agent continued, handing the girl to Izuku. "You gave them the antidote, right?" Izuku asked. "Oh god no. I'm sorry mom. Please, put the butter away," cried an agent that fell off of Kai's back. "Unfortunately we may have forgotten to pack any," the agent said as the other agents worked to subdue the hallucinating one. "Now if you'd excuse me, we need to subdue him again and get back to HQ. If you came on Kai, how are you getting back exactly?" Izuku asked. All the agents froze, as they realized they had made a fatal error. After a few moments of awkward silence, the masked agent said, "Can we stay in your front yard while we wait for transportation?" After getting over his shock at their lack of any thought in general, Izuku nodded. The agent pulled out his phone, however after looking at it for a moment he just put it back in his pocket and turned to the other agents. "Does anyone have a phone that's charged?" If Izuku wasn't as nice of a person, he would have face-bombed. Meanwhile, the kids, with the exception of Fukunoko, were getting acquainted. "My what a terrifying appearance. Truly you are a magnificent beast," Kiba praised. "Oh, thanks," Kai said. "You are very pretty." "Of course I am. It's simply natural," Kiba boasted. "I could be half dead and still look amazing." "Don't test that," Izuku shouted. "Can I climb you?" Kei asked her new kaiju brother. "Okay," Kai agreed. "Just try not to pull out my scales, please. It's very uncomfortable." Meanwhile, Sanson and Otoko were staring at each other. Sanson got closer to the green boy, but Otoko backed away before she could touch him. Otoko shook his head, trying to tell her he didn't want to be touched. Sanson remembered what his quirk was. Anyone who felt fear and touched Otoko would burst into flames. However, Sanson was made of liquid, and completely inflammable, as far as she knew, plus she wasn't afraid. She would be fine. She knew how it felt to be scared to touch people, and how much she wanted to. Sanson decided to ignore his protest and swiftly moved over to him, and wrapped around his neck. The boy freaked out for a moment, trying to shake Sanson off his neck to no success. But Sanson formed her head in front of his face and said, "Calm. Water can't be on fire." Otoko stopped for a moment and considered what she had just said. Normally he didn't allow anyone to touch him. His quirk could set someone on fire at any time, even someone who didn't seem afraid, or wasn't afraid at first could suddenly become afraid and burst into flames. But this girl was made of water, or something like water. She couldn't catch fire, right? And even if she could just put it out, right? Hesitantly, Otoko touched the slime girl, realizing how nice her watery body felt like on his mossy skin. After letting the DOC agents use his phone to call their HQ and telling them to wait outside, Izuku turned to address the children. Okay everyone, you can go inside now. Sansan, Kiba, could you please help carry their bags to their rooms? Izuku asked his children, before turning to the enormous kaiju. Kai, your room won't be ready for the next couple days. Sorry. It's okay. I had to sleep outside back with DOC anyway. Kai gave a slightly terrifying smile with all three heads. But thank you for making me a room to stay in, Father. I appreciate the great lengths you've gone through and I apologize for the trouble you must have experienced. Wow, he is really polite. Izuku realized. He looked down at the still unconscious girl in his arm. She seems shy, which makes sense considering her background. Otoko seems pretty calm too. Maybe everything will go fine? Izuku prayed and hoped that would be the case. Later that day, Fukunoko woke up in an unknown place in an unknown, but comfy bed, and was immediately terrified. Where am I? Was I kidnapped? The poor girl trembled in fear. She looked around, and while the room itself was new to her, it held many familiar items. Her teddy bear was propped up on a chair, all her clothes were hung up in a new wardrobe. Her precious Venus flytrap kitty was on a nearby table, and her books and toys were put away neatly as well. Oh right. I was being transferred to a new family. Stupid Fuku. Fukunoko berated herself. But, who'd want to take Fuku? I'm dangerous. Stupid. Unmarriable. Oh no. Maybe that man somehow took me back. What if he changed his name and look and adopted me so he could get revenge on me? Before she could continue theorizing and freaking herself out, there was a knock on her door, which was made of pure metal. Clang clang clang. Ah! I'm sorry. Fukunoko screamed. I didn't mean to use my quirk. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Fukunoko? Called out Izuku's voice. Are you okay? Fukunoko froze. Wait, that's not his voice. Who is that? Does he work with the men in suits? Is he here to scold me for using my quirk when I saw that monster? Please. I didn't mean to use my quirk. I was just scared. I won't do it again. I promise. Fukunoko begged, trying to both keep herself from crying and keep herself from accidentally using her quirk again. There was a small pause, until Izuku eventually said, I'm coming in. The metal door slid up, opening and allowing him inside, before closing behind him. Fukunoko was surprised by how young he was. He doesn't look like all the other people in suits. He's short. Against her better nature, Fukunoko found her lowering her guard just a little bit, after witnessing Izuku's completely non-threatening appearance. Hi. Izuku introduced himself. He didn't get too close to her, keeping just enough distance between them to keep her from getting any more uncomfortable than she already was. Hi. Fukunoko responded. Where am I? Who are you? Well, my name is Izuku Midoriya. Izuku introduced himself. And I'm your new guardian. Guardian? Fukunoko asked with no small amount of disbelief. You mean why you adopted me? That's right. Izuku nodded, giving her the kindest smile he could. WWY. Fukunoko moved backward until her back hit the wall. Why would you want Fuko? I am cursed. My quirk is bad. It hurts people. No one wants Fuko. Izuku's smile faltered. She reminds me of Eri. In the worst kind of way. Shaking off the feeling of wanting to punch someone, mainly this girl's father, Izuku spoke up. That's not true. I'm sure there are plenty of good things about you. There really isn't. Fuku shook her head rapidly. My quirk dash. Isn't a problem. Izuku cut her off, shocking her and causing her to emit an EAP. Sorry. Izuku apologized for startling her. But I, never explained what this place was, did I? My job is to take care of any kids acquired by DOC. This is a house to take care of children with quirks like yours. A house full of dangerous quirks? Fuku was now getting scared for a very different reason. Alright. But it's all made as safe as possible. Izuku tried to reassure her. All the kids are provided with things and the house is filled with things to increase the safety of everything. What kind of things? Fuku asked. WL for example, this is made so that if you have an accident and your cork acts up, then nothing bad will happen. The door is airtight so no gas can get out, and if that sensor detects any fear gas then the door will automatically lock and the vents will suck out all of the gas in seconds. Izuku explained. What if someone is in here? Fuku asked. Then they can put on one of those gas masks. Izuku pointed to some gas masks, hung up on a rack near the door. Sorry if you don't want them in here, but we have to have them for safety reasons. But what if they don't put it on fast enough? Fuku asked, still getting increasingly fearful and paranoid. Then we rush them to the med bay and give them the antidote. I located your room closest to med bay, so it should only take a minute to do that. Izuku told her. But they'll still be affected. And they'll still hate me because my quirk is scary. Fuku cried. Okay, it looks like she's extremely paranoid. And has all the self-esteem issues Eri had. Izuku thought. He recalled his own personal experiences with paranoia. This was obviously much worse. Logic wouldn't work in this kind of situation. The only thing he could do was try and make her feel safe and give her time. Okay, clearly you don't feel comfortable here yet, Izuku told her as calmly as possible. You're in a new place, with new people, and you're scared. It's okay, I understand. He got up and took out a map from his pocket and put it down on the nearby table. This is a map of the house so you don't get lost. If you need anything then just come to me. Izuku went to the door and opened it. Try and make yourself comfortable here. No one is going to hurt you. And with that Izuku left Fuku to her extremely paranoid thoughts. A place full of dangerous people, who all probably hate me. Fuku had no reason to think that her intense paranoia caused her to think this. After spending who knows how long panicking, she managed to calm herself down, if only just enough to keep herself from fainting again. Calm down Fuku, calm down. You said the same thing about the other place and you're still alive. She told herself. Maybe I'm just being stupid. Stupid Fuku. Before she could continue trying, mostly unsuccessfully, to calm herself, suddenly Kai's giant head appeared in the window. Hello, new sister. I have come to apologize for scaring you before. Kai bellowed. Fuku stared at the giant for about 5 seconds, before gas exploded out of her body and she fainted once again.